Okay, we're about 6 minutes early. I'm going to do a few things, make sure we're running. And I want to clear up a couple of things about things I've said in the past. And then we're going to upset the entire Bruce Lee fan base community. That's just the way it goes. Sorry, Charlie. Uh, I won't give anything away, but this is called reality check for a reason. But I need to go back because there was some misconceptions about what I was saying about the relationship in judo and kata, specifically judo kata. So, point number one, if your goal in doing judo is you want an Olympic medal or a national championship, you're doing judo for that. You have absolutely no need of kata and probably shouldn't mess with it. There are better ways to train athletes for Olympic level contests that we didn't have in 1882 or 1886. So let's take that off the table. Number two, if you're studying judo to use it somewhere else, an example, you're doing judo because you want to use it in mixed martial arts. I think that's a bad idea unless you've been doing judo for 20 years and you're an Olympic gold medalist or something. I think you're far better off with wrestling. But if you're trying to use judo somewhere else, or you want to use judo for self-defense, and by the way, I think all martial arts, with probably the exception of combat sambo, shouldn't be studied for self-defense first. I think the first thing somebody should do, martial artist or not, is take one of those model mugging program. Because that guy in the rubber suit, you can smack him as hard as you want, and you're not going to hurt him. You're going to get used to the stresses of combat, and it's going to prepare you better. So if you look at 1 and 2, I think I'm being pretty honest and open about what you should be doing to prepare for what you want. But if you're telling me I want to learn legitimate Kodokan Judo the way Kanu created it, not by all these phony balonies who have been coming down the pike for the last 40 years, then not only should you learn the kata, you have to learn the kata, or you'll never understand what Kanu was getting at. Period. I have a dear friend named Al. Al is a huge kata expert, competitor, gold medalist. Yes, folks, you can compete in kata on an international scale. Him and his late partner actually went to the Kodokan and competed. So I wouldn't poo-poo it. And I can think of 2 other friends of mine named Jeff and Heiko, and I wouldn't poo-poo that. They can hurt you, and so can Al. And his late partner, Mark, on more than one occasion, helped demonstrate an arm lock with me. I'm just saying. But no, for, I guess, competitive judo, but see, you can compete in kata too. So that's not really a good way to say it. Specifically sport judo that the IJF supports, and if you follow that path, you can go all the way to the Olympics. Then no, you have other things to do with your time. I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying that's not, it's like if you're going to go take swimming, you don't do any dry land swimming. You get into the pool and get to work. That's all I'm saying. One person is here. I don't know who it is, but I can see you're up there. So I hope that puts aside what I was trying to say and maybe didn't say it as well as I should have. Now, today, this is a subject that absolutely fries people. I will give you a task right here on YouTube. Search for Bruce Lee. Look how many fan groups he has. Then go in there and look at the posts. Personally, here's where we start. Almost all of them are delusional. I'll get to that in 1 second. For instance, there's one here that asserts Bruce Lee created mixed martial arts. And then they show these various videos claiming they're from different places. But 90% of the videos, unless there's something they took on a set, is from one place. Bruce was asked to do a demo at Ed Parker's Long Beach Invitational. So he and Dan and Osanto went there and did a demonstration. I had 2 people and they're gone. I've already upset them. I'm sorry. They weren't fighting. They were sparring. It wasn't a contest. Bruce was demonstrating his theories. Yeah, Joe Louis, Karate Joe Louis, came down and helped Bruce with the demo. But he wasn't teaching Joe Louis how to punch. That assertion is bullcrap. And he didn't have Joe punch and then show Joe what a real punch looked like. Are you kidding? Joe Louis was about to be world heavyweight champion when they made karate full contact. Joe Louis in Texas, at one of those opening events, hit a guy, McDaniels was the last name, with a hook so hard he hospitalized him. You can read all sorts of stories about Bruce Lee, and it's fascinating how many are coming out now. But I'm going to pull it all the way back, and let's walk through this. First, grim reality. Christine is just being really painful today. She wants all the attention, and I don't know why. She's been fed, and she's got everything she needs. But I'm an old softy when it comes to my cat, so deal with it, guys. Anyway, every single martial art fad, I don't care when it was, I don't care what it was. Every single one, to be a fad, had to have a Superman. Let me be plain. Somebody who defied the laws of physics. Let's go to karate. Let's go to Masatatsu Oyama. That was Superman. Masatatsu Oyama, who fought bulls with his bare hands, knocked the horns off, one punch, and the bull was dead. Those stories are told to this day. He's got fan groups here too. On my Facebook page, I just posted something from one of his top students, a guy named John Bluming. And years ago, and I think the magazine is defunct now, but the Journal of Asian Martial Arts, John Bluming spilled the beans, explained how all the breaking stunts were done, and they were all tricks. If you honestly think you can take 4 1-inch pine boards and break all 4 with a finger jab, show me. He also spilled the beans about fighting bulls. First, he said he never fought the bulls because he never went to Spain. He went to a couple of slaughterhouses and they would bring out a steer to try to do this. And if you look, there's a film of this on YouTube. And Blumming said to Oyama, don't show that film. It's ridiculous. People are going to laugh at you. But off the camera, they took a hammer and banged on the horn till it was ready to fall off. And the time he so-called killed the bull, again, you're at a slaughterhouse. They hit the bull in the head with a hammer. And the bull staggers around until Oyama pops it. And what would normally happen, he would wrestle it to the ground, break the horn or whatever, and what can I tell you? That's the truth. Go look it up. When he came here to America, he didn't fight. He was a professional wrestler. Come on. But everybody bought it. And after karate, we came into kung fu. And that was Bruce Lee's bailiwick. And guys, let's put it on the table because we're eventually going to have to come back to it. Physics is physics. Let me caution you, if you really study and memorize and learn physics, you'll never again be able to watch an action movie. Because when you do, you're going to go, that won't work. In fact, there's a very funny scene in Captain America Civil War when the various superheroes are fighting. Spider-Man is in there. And remember, he's supposed to be a young science student, Peter Parker. And things are going on, and Cap throws the shield, and Peter Parker grabs it, Spider-Man, and says, wow, this is amazing. I've always wanted to have this because I don't understand how every time you throw this, you violate the laws of physics. I'm in the theater and I'm dying. Nobody else is. They're all going, what? But I thought it was hysterical. Newton himself, guys, in his 3 laws of motion, says force equals mass times acceleration. Period, guys. Bruce Lee cannot say, I'm going to rewrite Newton. I'm going to change those rules. No, you're not. In the 1960s, one of the radical judo books, most controversial one ever written, was a book called Judo Training Methods. And the book blew apart the biggest fallacy about judo, which is that little guys can kick the crap out of big guys. Well, they've got a chance if the big guy knows nothing about judo. But if they do, the little guy's going to get crushed. In fact, they make the point in the book that there was never an all-Japan champion in the history of judo, an all-Japan judo champion. There was never one that was under 170 pounds. That's not a lightweight, guys. And Bruce was about 130 to 135. And that's why, I don't care what anybody tells you, he never entered a tournament. And he wasn't gonna, because he knew early on if he was to lose or get his butt kicked, that would be the end of the myth. That heavy bag in his backyard, have you noticed every 4 or 5 years it gets heavier? In Black Belt magazine, when that was first written up and they showed him kicking it, Black Belt magazine said it was 300 pounds. Oh, okay, that's possible. The sites here now say that bag was 700 pounds. And if you know anything about bags and weight. 700 pounds? I don't think so. But Bruce Lee, from the Green Hornet, the whole world thought he was the baddest man on the planet. Now, before I go any further and remove this urban legend part of Bruce Lee, let me tell you the real part of him, and nobody talks about it. They all want to make him a badass. He could kick anybody's ass. Wally J knew him. He used to come out to Wally J's school up in Washington State all the time. And this is what Wally told me in the car. Bruce Lee was the most amazing martial artist he had ever met. And Wally came from Hawaii and saw all sorts of judo and jiu-jitsu phenomena. And then I said, well, how is that, Professor? What made him so special? And he said, well, you could show him a technique Monday night. And before that class was over, he'd know how to do it. When he came back Tuesday night, not only could he do it, he would do it better than anybody in the room. And when he came back Wednesday night, he was doing it better than anybody in the world. That's what people should be talking about. How Bruce's mind and body could dissect this stuff and turn it into something. But please don't push the nonsense that a 130-pound man is going to kick the crap out of a trained fighter who's 220. We wouldn't have weight classes if that was possible. In fact, in those days, the biggest professional wrestler was a guy named Bruno Sammartino. And the truth is, I'm not saying professional wrestling isn't scripted and predetermined. Don't understand me too quickly. But Bruno really could do it. If you were dumb and didn't go with the script and do what you were supposed to do, Bruno would break you in half. And never forget, guys, and this is the truth, he was so bloody popular. He sold out Madison Square Gardens, I think 4 times and maybe more. People showed up to see that fight. They were that serious. And I knew it was fake. I know it was scripted. Well, in the middle of his popularity, Bruno Sammartino, they asked him about Bruce Lee because Bruce was coming up as the baddest man on the planet. And Bruno Sammartino, trying to be a gentleman, because he always was a gentleman, said, "Are you kidding? What's he weigh, like 130? Don't be ridiculous." Now the martial art world became enraged. Bruce Lee would destroy him. When you push the people who say that stuff, you always push them and find out what they're really saying. What they are really saying is Bruce was so fast, he'd poke you in the eye before you could do anything, and that would end the fight. So Mo Howard would be the strongest fighter in the world. But they all say it on the David Letterman show years ago. Oh, the guy from Seinfeld. I can't think of his name now. But he studies Jeet Kune Do, and he was working out with a noted judo champion. And the judo champion went out and grabbed him and said, "I got you. I would have thrown you." And what did the guy say? "Oh, no, I did that. I hit you in the eye. Fight's all over." I wouldn't rely on that if I were you guys. If the Mo Howard worked that well, we would have never developed firearms. Yeah, it hurts. Yeah, it's distracting. But it's like getting kicked in the nuts. It's awful, but it doesn't always end your day. But that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about getting into a knockdown, drag out fight. And speaking of that, let's talk about the one nobody wanted to talk about. And even Gene LaBelle himself has changed the story. Because if he tells the truth, the same fan base that's going to want to gather dry kindling and tie me to the stake was all over him everywhere. And Gene wanted to do seminars. Gene wanted to continue to make a living. So the story went from what really happened to, no, we were just playing around. I put him in a headlock and I picked him up. And he got a little unhappy about that because I was teasing him. But I went over there and trained him for several weeks. Well, that is what Gene says now. But what happened on the set of The Green Hornet was dead silent for many years until one day, long after Bruce was gone, Ed Parker put the story in print. Not Gene, Ed Parker. And later, the grappling column in Black Belt magazine took the story and said, we all knew it, but since Ed Parker has spilled it, we may as well share it. What really happened was Bruce was whacking the stuntman. In his mind, that's how you made it look better. You kick him and knock him off the set. And as we already know from the story with Gene and Steven Seagal, and yes, that one's true too, Gene went to Bruce and said, hey, knock it off. You don't have to do that. You don't have to hurt anybody. It's time to be a pro. And he and Bruce had words. And those words turned into a fight. They were not playing around. Bruce Lee flat out said he was going to kick Gene's ass. And they went at it. And Bruce was immediately taken down, pinned, and arm locked. Fight over. No eye gouge. No 100 power kick. Bruce got his ass kicked. Now, Bruce being Bruce, remember what I told you that Wally J immediately said, I want to train with you. Because he had never seen that sort of shit before. He was used to stand-up karate kung fu stuff. He'd never been grabbed and dumped and pinned and arm locked. So Gene started teaching him. And that is the true story. But his fans can't stand it. Some fat wrestler isn't taking out Superman. He's 130 pounds. Nobody is Superman. But about that training, let me tell you the second story. That, although I should point out, there has been a brand new biography about Bruce Lee called Bruce Lee, A Life. It's interesting, nobody's talking about that book because this guy spills a lot of beans. I haven't read it yet. I've only read reviews. You notice the Bruce Lee fans aren't talking about this. But they do talk about this. They call Gene a judo expert. But they're talking about Gene. Gene went to Bruce's house several times and trained him in grappling. But then he stopped going. Why? Gene said, I couldn't stand the marijuana smell. Bruce got high all the time. He had a little box out there full of marijuana cigarettes. And he was constantly doing it. And some people didn't mind. Steve McQueen got him into that. That and hashish, uh, marijuana munchies. Bruce really got into the hash and the brownie stuff. But the bottom line is Bruce had a drug problem. And now maybe that's because he was so wired, he needed to calm down. I'm not putting him down for it, but he had it. And nobody's talked about it. And as I said, this nonsense that he had all of these fights, they're all rumors, guys. Video evidence, or I don't believe it. The current brand new Bruce Lee story told, oh god darn it, I should have taken notes. Jim Kelly. They were all together in Enter the Dragon. Jim Kelly just told the story, and this is what he said. He and Bruce used to go all over the country, and they'd go to martial arts schools, and they'd go in there, and they'd ask to fight the best student. And if the guy didn't want to do that, they left, that was fine. But if they said, okay, either he or Bruce would get on the mat and kick the crap out of whatever the best student was. Didn't matter where they went, didn't matter where they go, didn't matter who the students were. Him and Bruce kicked everybody's ass. And once they kicked the best student's ass, they asked to fight the instructor. Now, it's interesting because when I was running the school, I was 50 years old, not exactly in my prime. But yeah, we had people come down there and try to dojo bash too. Now, everybody on the Bruce Lee forums, oh, we have confirmation. Bullshit. You have a guy named Jim Kelly who people do not remember, don't even know who he was. So he's created current relevancy by telling a story that did not happen. You're telling me Bruce Lee, in the middle of movies and coming back and all the money he made teaching stars and being the fight coordinator for the Wrecking Crew and all of that, had time to go to everybody's dojo? And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's got a picture. Come on, guys. Never happened. But it is true, and it's a horrible story. Right after the Green Hornet closed, Bruce went to the executive producer with an idea for a television show. And it was a spectacular idea. And it was a show that was going to take the whole world, especially the martial art world, by storm. And that show was to become called Kung Fu. Bruce wrote the show to star in it. And they shot, not a full pilot with him, but they did scenes so someone could look at it. My hand to the Lord, this too is true. The producer of the Green Hornet brings in the film. All the execs from ABC come into the room. They play the film. And the head guy who's going to make the decision turns to Dozier and says, does he have to look so Chinese? And Dozier says, he's a Chinese person in this. He flees China to come to America. Yeah, I don't think Americans are going to watch, forgive me, not my words, are going to want to watch a slant eye every week. Can you make him look less Chinese? So what did they do? They could have had Bruce Lee, you idiots. They hired David Carradine. And did his eyes. And on the show, they said he was half Chinese. His father was American, his mother was Chinese, and he came to America to try to find his brother. Bruce wasn't happy. And I think it was the dumbest thing ever. Are you kidding me? I watched the show. David Carradine looked like crap. Looked like doing Tai Chi when he was doing stuff. And yet, later in life, Carradine thought he was actually a real martial artist. Bruce goes to China, well, Hong Kong, and they tell him he's a star. He didn't know. They didn't call it the Green Hornet, they called it Kato. And that's what led to all the stuff over there and all sorts of awful stuff. He was a womanizer. He was a drug addict. He had a mistress, even though he had a wife and 2 kids, who he left in America and pursued his stuff over there. But again, there's all sorts of rumors. The problem is none of them are substantiated. They're all told by students. And okay, guys, these are my words. And here comes the big one. They're all told by students who have been pimping a dead guy for 40 years. They say, Bruce Lee, we're going to do a seminar. Here's Bruce Lee techniques. And everybody wants to come because this guy's going to tell you Bruce Lee was Superman. Oh, he always kicked my ass. If a 130-pound guy is kicking your ass, I'm not impressed. But here is the ultimate story that you have never heard. And it's real, and it's legitimate, and don't take my word for it. Search for it. Hang on. And there's only 2 of you here. Others will probably see this down the road. But are you ready? Bruce Lee died, 73, I think. Look that up because I don't want to be incorrect. As an homage to Bruce, Dan Inosanto at their school in California gathered the very best Jeet Kune Do students that they had. These weren't guys that they went to the bar and picked up. These were Bruce Lee students from Bruce Lee's program doing Jeet Kune Do, and Inosanto put a team together. And he went to Ed Parker's Long Beach Karate International Tournament, where Bruce got his big break. And he did this to honor Bruce. And they named the team after him or something that represented him. And they entered the team contest. And if you're out there and know judo, it's the same way if we have team contests in judo. 2 guys come out, bang, bang, bang. 1 wins, 1 loses. Next 2 guys come out, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. You add it up at the end, and you see who won. And there were now again, I'm sorry I'm old. I should have looked this up and had it in front of me. I think there were 5 teams. And Inosanto's team fought every team that was there. I think it was 5 guys, 5 teams, something like that. Are you ready? This great team of Bruce's best students, all trained in the ultimate martial arts system of Jeet Kune Do, didn't score a single point. Any of them. Every single one got trounced. No points at all. You might notice they have never gone out there again to say, we're doing Jeet Kune Do. All of a sudden, and it's the classic excuse, oh, we don't do sport. We fight for real. No rules, no referees. The only other thing I will also add, when the Gracies brought No Holds Barred UFC, the Octagon, there were a couple of Jeet Kune Do people who entered the tournaments, and they all got their ass kicked. What does that say about this ultimate system? Far more experienced and learned people than I have pointed out that that's why they started saying it's not a system, it's a concept. That way it excuses when you get your ass kicked. Personally, I think it's something Bruce Lee could do, but nobody else can. I said the same thing to Ed Parker. Ed Parker, in his book, shows the fighting ranges for the first time. This was way back, the late 70s, before he passed. And if you see the book, it's got him in his stance, and there's lines showing the different fighting ranges. And I looked at Ed Parker right in the face. I said, you're out of your mind. Look at how small the distance is between those lines. You're never going to discern that in a fight. You're going to be too busy not getting punched in the face. There's only two distances, out and in. Either we can punch one another, or I've tied you up so we can't. All else is nonsense. But does that really take anything away from Bruce? Other than exposing the fact that he's not Superman any more than Masatatsu was, or Hoist Gracie. This is nothing new. Look at all the stories we got when the Gracies got here. I was on the internet then. I saw them all. Horian and Hoist went to the Kodokan and kicked everybody's ass. And when you say, where's the pictures? Oh, well, they didn't do that. Really? Because anytime I've seen them win, they've got pictures. They just never show you the pictures where they lose. Example, Ron Tripp crushed Hickson Gracie. I know, that's the 500-0 Superman that the Gracies point to. Yeah, at the Sambo Nationals, he didn't last 30 seconds. Why is there no pictures? Are you saying they weren't there taking pictures? No, the Gracie move is we bury the pictures where we lost. We hide the videos where we didn't kick somebody's butt. It's a game they all play, guys. Nobody is Superman. Nobody can beat anybody out there. And Newton reigns over all. That's just the way it is. You guys, that's my story about Bruce Lee. And as they used to say, believe it or not. Have fun. We'll get together again sometime. Good night, and may God bless.